Do you ever wish that communicating with your dog was as easy as the touch of a button?
That was easy.
Well, now it is. Hello, I'm James Jacobson. Welcome to the Long Leash. We went back to our archives to bring you an interview with a cognitive scientist who is using technology to help us better communicate with our dogs. Most people are able to understand our dog's basic needs and wants, things like, I need to go to the bathroom or I'm hungry. But what if there was a tool for your dog to relay complex thoughts and emotions to you in English or in whatever language you speak? Well, Leo Trottier, today's guest, has developed something that allows you to do that. He is the CEO of a company called Clever Pet, and he is on a mission to discover just how much our dogs are capable of understanding and communicating with us using these buttons. The results are, well, I think nothing less than remarkable. In this conversation, Leo shares the science behind these talking buttons and the psychology behind communication in general. He also tells you what he hopes will come next in his research. With new technology on the horizon, getting a text message from your dog while at work, well, it may be not so far-fetched. Stay tuned after our conversation for an update on what Leo is doing today. Leo Trottier, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, James. It's great to be here.
So when you started your company, you weren't exactly focused on these language buttons, were you?
Yeah. So the current brand that most people probably know us as is Fluent Pet, which makes these sound buttons. And we started as the company Clever Pet, which makes a computer game console for dogs, which provides food when they solve little puzzles. The idea is it's for all day play. It's for providing entertainment and interaction and engagement for dogs when they're not around. Now, unfortunately, we've sold out of all of them. We're not currently in production with Clever Pet Hub. We love it. We might bring it back at some point. Right now, we've been focused on figuring out how to teach dogs to talk with buttons.
Okay, so that is really where your focus is. It's not on I think I had the names messed up, but it's not
I get
on
the names
those,
messed up half the time.
Those toys that are basically are food rewarded toys to see how clever your pet is. And in fact, you're determining how fluent your pets are.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so you're living in fluency. And you come to it very honestly from your academic background.
Yeah, so my background's in cognitive science. I did an undergrad degree in cognitive science and AI way before people were doing any of that deep learning stuff, and then went into a grad program in cognitive science at UC San Diego. And I was always interested in learning. When I was there, I studied learning as part of my PhD, and it was while I was there that the kind of big idea came that, look, we've got dogs and cats alone at home all day. They are really smart and sophisticated. And we also have all this software and these like great connected homes. Like there's got to be a way to put these two things together.
Was that the focus of your PhD dissertation?
It was not. No, it was I was looking at like spatial and environmental learning.
So what was the genesis of your interest in dogs and cats?
So, I mean, I've always loved animals. And I mean, we really do think of ourselves almost as like a cognitive science company, if that makes sense. We love dogs and cats, obviously, but we also love all the other animals that might decide to use Fluent Pet and Clever Pet devices. We really see ourselves as like a company that appreciates the value of minds and brains and all of that. And it's just, we don't privilege humans as much as some other companies do. It's kind of the way we think.
Okay, well that's fair enough. But of course, this is Dog Podcast Network, so yeah. I want to confirm that the main animals that are using this are dogs.
I think we are 85% dog.
Okay,
roughly.
So that's fair. I mean, we know. I know you have some cats. I've seen them in some videos.
Yeah,
very clever cats. But most of your customer base are dogs.
Correct. And the real idea for all of this came from noticing, this would have been actually about 10 years ago, maybe a bit more, noticing that there was these like depth cameras that people were putting out. Microsoft Kinect, if that rings a bell, it's ancient.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're selling them anymore. Anyway, the idea there was that it was the first animal-friendly computer interface. I mean, we've got keyboards and mice and joysticks and, Dance Dance Revolution pads.
Right.
All of those things are not very dog-friendly, but you can make any depth camera dog-friendly by just giving it different software to like recognize what the dog is doing, where they're looking. And these devices were in millions of homes, and they were connected to these large displays and fast internet connections and fast computers. And they were pointed out at the part of the home where the dog is resting half the day, which is like in the living room on the couch. All you need to add to that is a food reward device, and you've opened up a whole amazing potential for automated training and interaction.
And so Microsoft's vision was not any of this.
No.
This is all tied in with the video games.
Correct. Yeah. So Microsoft I think I tried to talk to some of the people at Microsoft a few times. They weren't that interested in the whole, let's teach dogs automatically. So we ended up coming up with the Clever Pet Hub because, there were already three big problems that we were trying to tackle. There was the, how do you make a software-based curriculum for training dogs? No one had done that before.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make software that can use computer vision to recognize position and posture in dogs? That had never been done before.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was no really good food reward device. Your community might know of like Treat and Train, but that was not connected to the internet or anything like that. And it wasn't super precise, and it wasn't really that dog proof. So we had all of these constraints that we were trying to operate under to make the Clever Pet Hub, to make a thing that was super dog resistant, that could hold a full day's worth of food, right? So that didn't need to just be treats. It could be food as well. So it could be like a slow feeder,
right?
That was useful out of the box. So you didn't need to have a Microsoft Kinect in your home. And we wanted it to work for everyone. We wanted it to be really reliable and robust. So the hard part was there was not even the ability to give the food rewards out in any kind of easy way.
Right.
And so we ended up having to make that hardware. That was a whole odyssey.
So you're not the kind of person who shies away of challenges. You said you didn't have one, two, you had three challenges. And there you are with cognitive psychology background. There's something that doesn't kind of connect. There's an engineering mindset and a coding mindset. Do you have that, or did you just acquire that?
Yeah. So cognitive science and artificial intelligence is very multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary in its approach. So it is a combination of certainly there is definitely psychology and philosophy and neuroscience and math and statistics and computer science. So I knew how to code. I wouldn't call myself a software engineer, but I definitely knew how to code going into grad school.
Okay.
And I knew the basics of probability, and it was a great background for all of this.
So when you had those three challenges and you were starting off, what year was this?
This would have been like the earliest days were 2013.
Okay. So way back then in 2013, what kind of reception did you have from the world as you tried to tackle these rather three big challenges?
Well, we distilled it down to that one, which was largely the hardware challenge. We just punted on the computer vision stuff. We're like, because we knew the hardware was a prerequisite. People loved it. People loved the idea of automated at-home training or an interaction. They got it a lot. A lot of people got it right away. We had a few people saying, "Oh, this is a first world problem," but that wasn't really the perspective. We weren't there trying to like make a thing that scratched a very small itch. I was super excited about what the result would be of having millions of households that were all discovering these new things about the dogs that they love and the cats they love. Mostly the dogs, right?
85%.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens when you have 1 million households or 2 million households and they get to watch videos of their dogs learning to do things they never thought they could do. Maybe they've got like kids in school who are tweaking the software and seeing what the results are from like a learning and behavior perspective. And you can look at the data over the course of 6 months or a year or 2 years, and you can share the videos online. That was the thing that was really exciting.
So the thing that undergirds all of this is the belief that dogs, animals, have and lead complex
100%.
inner lives.
Yeah, definitely.
Explain that. Let's tease that apart.
Yeah. So certainly the more I studied cognitive science, the more it became clear that the kinds of ways people describe how thinking works, they're not that human specific. It's not like if you were to look at a piece of brain and you didn't know which mammal it was from, it would be very hard for you to tell. Like they all look pretty similar. And if you don't actually even know what a human brain exactly looks like, you could look at a dog brain and you might think it was that of a human. I mean, they're smaller and they're differently structured and whatnot, but it's not dramatically different. They have a lot of the same components. And so, and this was the thing that Charles Darwin also kind of noticed in he wrote about it in The Origin of Species. He was, or I think it might have been his follow-on book, like The Descent of Man. Anyway, the point is he recognized that like if evolution's real, right, then that means we might have a lot more in common with other species than we have different. Prior to Darwin, kind of humanity was like, right under there's God and then there's the angels and then there's like humans and then, we have dominion over. That was, once you kind of bring evolution into the mix, it stops being this massive categorical qualitative difference. And now it's like, there's a lot that we've got in common. So that was emotions, feelings, visual perception, all of these things that are actually really core to cognition, are core to our ability to behave and interact intelligently in the world. All these things dogs can do quite well as well.
So that includes emotions.
And probably it includes imagery, right? So most humans can engage in visual imagery. We can, if I say, imagine someone wearing a sombrero, like you can imagine someone wearing a sombrero, right? Like
so imagery, imagination, exactly. Being able to. What about abstract thoughts?
I don't actually know what an abstract thought is, right? The cool thing about imagery is it's kind of just like you run the thing, but that you've turned off the sensors, right? Like that's the thing. The same thing it was doing the same thing it was doing before. It's just the sensors are turned off. Your eyes are closed, for instance, right? But abstract thought is a little bit more complex. It's likely that the way that humans do abstract thought is through imagined conversations, right? With like your parents or something. So we don't know how it would be the case for like a non-linguistic animal like a dog to engage in abstract thought, but it does really seem like they can plan things. And so something must be going on.
We'd only talk about our own dogs, but I've seen firsthand how dogs, some very clever dogs, plan to, I remember that thing that was left outside. So
right.
We are definitely going to go visit that. And days after I'd forgotten about it, but they didn't.
Totally.
So in terms of abstract thoughts, years and years ago, I did some stuff with famous quote unquote pet psychics. And I was told that, you can communicate with pets and basically they form word pictures and they're able to pick up on that. What do you think about that?
So we talked about visual imagery. There's also acoustic or sound imagery that humans can also have. So, especially if you're like a musician, you can often hear music in your head. You can compose music in your head, right?
Right.
I would expect that there's no reason for us to believe that dogs don't also have the ability to have some kind of sound imagery. We might also, if they've got sound imagery and they've got visual imagery, we might expect that they can also imagine scenes and situations. They might be able to predict what would happen if a particular set of things occurred and then kind of make planning decisions based on that. Now, it's really hard to discover and kind of say anything scientific about what the kind of detailed idiosyncratic things that are going on inside a human's head, let alone the head of a dog. But we don't really have that much reason to believe that, at least at a simple level, dogs aren't able to do this kind of thing.
And when you say a simple level, does that equate to a certain age of a child and a human child?
Yeah, right. So that's kind of a lot of the things that make humans sophisticated is the really cool, at least this is kind of my opinion, and it's, I think, shared by a number of people in cognitive science and the related disciplines, is a lot of the things that allow us to be sophisticated, intelligent, like powerful, as it were, operators in the world is all the stuff that we've learned in school. All these like really cool and advanced concepts like the idea, it wasn't that long ago where no one would ever say 10%. I said 85% earlier, right?
Right.
300 years ago, if you had said 85%, people have been like, what do you mean? But it's this like technical term that has managed to find its way into just everyday use. And so it's got this, I think of it as like a tool, right? It's this like cool thing that humans used in order to accomplish more things and get more things done and have more productive interactions with each other. Imagine it's not just percent, but it's every word that we use, every attitude that we share with each other, and that has been culturally evolved over thousands of years. Like all of those things are part of what's responsible for us being as smart in the world as we are. And it's a thing that dogs don't really have access to.
Until now, until Fluent Pet and all the other companies that are out there enabling us to have our pets have a human voice. So for someone who's never seen it,
right,
describe a Fluent Pet setup.
So Fluent Pet is a system of hex tiles and sound buttons.
Hexagonal.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
there are these kind of pads that are hexagonal. They are puzzle pieces that connect together. And in them, you can put sound buttons. The sound buttons are buttons that when you press them, out comes a word that you've recorded into them. So you can record a common word that people start with is like the word outside. You might put a sound button by your front door, and you've recorded yourself saying outside into the sound button. Then the dog goes.
So you record a word,
a single word.
How many seconds do you have when you?
Ours actually, I think, will allow you to record up to 30 seconds. I think that's common. That's not a feature we tried to. It's just like that's the default that these things were built with. And so, but usually, like most of these words are 1 or 2 seconds long. So.
Okay. And if you've never seen one of these, it's similar to years ago Staples or one of the Office. I think Staples had that was easy button that became ubiquitous. Everyone saw it. And that's basically, I'm sure they're slightly perfected, but basically that's what we're talking about in terms of technology.
It's a very simple thing. So I want to give credit where credit is due. The person who really popularized this, her name was Christina Hunger. She herself was a speech language pathologist. She tried to teach her dog Stella basically how to communicate with buttons. She herself had experience with helping younger children, maybe children who had linguistic development difficulties, communicate using, for her, what were called AAC, what would be called AAC, augmentative and assistive communication devices. And she found that the techniques that she had learned and developed expertise in that worked for these like young children ended up working for her dog Stella. And she started an Instagram account, and it got extremely popular in the fall of 2019. And a bunch of other people were inspired by her. And then they started, a lot of early childhood educators, a lot of speech language pathologists, a lot of occupational therapists. They're like, I know how to do what she's doing. And they tried to do it, and they also were seeing success. So it was this tremendous
discovery. They brought their
discovery.
day job home, the stuff that they were doing with kids who, they took their vocation into their home and applied it to their pets. And 85% dogs. And lo and behold, found out that it works.
Absolutely. And now, as to as to the details of what exactly is going on, that is TBD, right? But they found that they were achieving success with what we call their learners, their dogs, and in a small minority of cases, their cats. So what the genesis of Fluent Pet was, all these people, they were this is all DIY. They were improvising these devices. They were buying things of plywood from Home Depot and like Velcro off Amazon, and they were putting them all together, and they were organizing them often in these like just plain square grids where each of the buttons was kind of indistinguishable one from the other, apart from like a little label. And there's no reason for us to believe that the dogs read the label, right?
They weren't reading. We're pretty
not
sure
yet,
they wasn't,
not at least.
Not literate. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I knew a little bit about cognitive science and about product design. And so I said, she lives in San Diego. I said, hey, like, why don't you organize them in a little bit of a systematic way? You can use what's called Fitzgerald key, named after this woman around 100 years ago. She was trying to help people who are deaf or hard of hearing communicate. In this case, they weren't using buttons, but they were pointing at things. And she would organize concepts into a grid where each part of speech kind of had its own square. So you'd have subject words like a person, like James
Mhm.
or Leo.
Mhm.
You'd have object words like a branch or a stick or something. You might have
Water.
greeting words like hello, verbs, jump, and everyone knows how language works, right? So
Mhm.
she would organize.
So this was
Yeah.
100 years
This is
ago.
100 years ago. And so I said to
Ms. Fitzgerald came up with this system.
Yeah. And it worked, right? At least people ended up adopting it.
Mhm.
So because this was so new, I was like, well, we should just go with, there's no real science in that much in the way of science to go on. We should just go with
Right.
what practitioners are actually using out there.
Right.
And,
Right.
and so that was like, okay, well, let's organize the sound buttons into tiles that could correspond to the elements of a Fitzgerald key. And maybe it probably wouldn't hurt. And so it could only help. And that was the basis for we created like a test pilots group. And we started working with these people who had achieved all this success to try and give them better tools.
Okay. And so you start to give dogs or cats or whatever, some of these vocabulary words, which they can just press their paw down and it makes a sound instantaneously, which is the recorded voice of the dog parent saying a word. And what did you start to see?
So what our test users reported was that their dogs were a bit more enthusiastic to use it, that they were using it more often, that they were able to apparently learn words more quickly. Now, these are all anecdotes.
Mm-hmm.
So, we haven't done the study where we give 100 dogs one thing and 100 dogs another. But that was what people were saying, and they liked it. And plus, it was also just more convenient. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of practical difficulties that people were encountering with the large buttons and the plywood. It was taking over their living room. The buttons we were making were smaller. They were designed to be very compact, so that you could put a lot more buttons into a given space. And so basically in the spring of 2020, a memorable period of time, I think, for probably most people.
What happened then? Yeah.
we started doing things that had nothing to do with any of that.
Right.
And we were meeting with people every 2 weeks. We gave them prototypes that were much bigger at the time. And eventually, one of the people we gave them to was this woman, Alexis Devine. She has the dog, the Sheepadoodle Bunny, whom probably many of your listeners might be familiar with.
Probably people have seen a bunny video or two on YouTube or Insta.
Yeah. And so she started using it. She actually didn't have an Instagram, or she might have had an Instagram account. No, I don't think she even had an Instagram account. She certainly didn't have a TikTok account at the time. She started the TikTok account and got up to 7 million followers on TikTok because she had a very charismatic dog who was really doing great with buttons. And then we kind of partnered with her and the other test pilots, as we called them, and then launched on the end of June. And it's kind of been this crazy roller coaster ever since.
What's the nature of the partnership?
We have what we call a guide program. And so these are people, they have links on their bios that are affiliate links. And if people see something and learn something and want to get Hextile, then they can click on the link. We want to give as much as we can to the people who are actually doing the things with their dogs, rather than to Facebook and Amazon and Google, who have plenty of money. They don't need any more money.
Yeah. I think Mark Zuckerberg would disagree, but in general, I think that's true. So did you guys basically, partly because people were home because of the pandemic, consuming this type of stuff and having more time to spend with their pets.
Yeah.
Did you start to see explosive growth?
We absolutely did. Yeah. We did over $1 million in revenue in our first 6 months, which was great. In the following year, we've done 5.5 million. So even more. We did an equity crowdfunding campaign that was fairly successful. It ended last month.
Meaning like a crowd?
It's like Kickstarter, except instead of getting like a thing that you order, you actually get some shares in the company. Yeah.
Wow. What's the platform that you did?
We did that on a platform called Republic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a different type of crowdsourcing, but you're actually, in theory, it could remunerate a lot better because you're actually getting equity.
Yeah, exactly.
Stock.
Yep. Yeah. That's the idea. So, it's been a ton of growth. We've been able to operate very efficiently because of the fact that the things that people are making are just so entertaining that they end up getting a lot of traction. And we try and help them.
Which is another way of saying that social media is basically giving you enormous amounts of free exposure.
We are also giving social media a lot of great content. So,
Right.
it's
a win-win.
Win-win, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like this podcast. Do you think that the very nature of the crazy times that we live in, with so many people being home and being able to spend a little bit extra indulgent time with their pets, has made a difference?
I think it probably almost certainly has. I think we would have seen growth. I don't think we would have seen the rate of growth that we ended up seeing. Mm-hmm. It's when you're kind of teaching a dog to use buttons, it really helps to be there to capture every time they might happen to experiment or explore, and then reward it and reinforce it, or help them understand and learn the meaning of the button that they just pressed. So if they want to go outside and you're there and it's the beginning of their learning, if they press the outside button, you go outside. If they press the play button, you start playing with them. Now, eventually, hopefully, you'll press the all done button, and then that'll be the end of play. But then they're learning what all done means too.
Does it work better with younger dogs, or can you teach an old dog new tricks?
We've seen a lot of old dogs and cats see success with the buttons.
Okay.
We don't know yet if it has to do with which kind of dog, mm-hmm. or whether it's the age of the dog, or whether it's maybe some je ne sais quoi of the human, right? That they're doing something just right that clicks with their learner, as we say. But we're trying to figure that out.
I want to take a break right here, but when we come back, Leo, let's talk a little bit more about the science and where you see this going. We'll be right back.
And now, a message from your dog.
Every day with you is like a day at the beach. And I want as many beach days as possible. I want to run and sniff and find a good stick to carry. I want to roll in the grass and warm my belly in the sun. I want to walk with you, run with you, sleep with you, eat with you. And when I eat with you, I want Everpup. The green, grassy beef liver spiked smell wakes my senses. You may not realize this, but it tastes like homemade gravy, especially when you wet it. It infuses any food you give me with health and life and vibrancy. I can feel it. Everpup traveling to every cell in my body, nourishing each one. Does it roll back time? Of course not. Not really. But it helps me feel like I'm on top of the world. I'm so glad you're giving it to me every day. Because every day I'm so glad to be with you. I'm so grateful to be your dog. And for the Everpup you give me.
So now that you know what your dog wants, get Everpup, the ultimate dog supplement. Everpup is available in select pet shops and on Amazon. But to get the best price possible, join the Everpup Club at everpupclub.com, where you'll get your first jar for just $8 with free shipping anywhere in the U.S. Go to everpupclub.com and use the discount code DPN. That is everpupclub.com. Everpup every day.
We are back with Leo Trottier from Fluent Pet. Leo, before the break, we were talking a little bit, we're trying to move into the science space, because I noticed that you've been very careful in your language about like couching things as, well, it could be, we don't know, it's anecdotal. How scientifically based is this? And I know you are trying to bring more science into it.
So certainly, as I'm trying to bring, and we're trying to bring as much of the established science that we can to what we're doing. I mean, it doesn't take that much sophistication to imagine that like a grid of identical buttons that are visually indistinguishable from each other might be more challenging to learn than one in which there was a lot more visual variety. That's kind of one thing that we can say with some amount of certainty. But the real way that we're incorporating science is through kind of an acknowledgement of the things that we're very ignorant of. So we don't really know exactly what's going on with dogs that are able to do this. What we do know is that we have people who know their dogs really well, inside and out. They know the context. They know their dog's personality. They know what happened yesterday and what's likely to happen tomorrow. And they can see for themselves whether the dog's use of the buttons is, in our words, like contextually appropriate. And so what we're trying to do is we've got this kind of large crowdsourcing science project where we have thousands of people who have signed up to provide regular updates about what their dog learned that week, what their dog's preferences have been that week, which buttons they press the most, which buttons have been introduced, all of that, in order to begin to kind of get a sense for the kind of what it is that dogs are actually doing.
So tell me a little bit about this project. Is it under the auspices of some university or education?
So yeah, we have a collaboration with a comparative cognition lab. And so they are the ones that we anonymize the data and whatnot that we'd be sharing the data with. Mm-hmm. We also have on staff, we have a number of just academic researchers. They are not, we help fund their fellowships or their stipends, I should say. Mm-hmm. But the work that they're doing is entirely, we're not telling them what it is that we expect to find. We really are just interested in getting a better sense for how this is all working. So so we are funding the research that into how dogs are using these buttons.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the personalities and the academic cred mm-hmm. of the folks who are working on that part of it.
Yeah, so at the Comparative Cognition Lab, we have one professor that we're working with closely. We just have an agreement where I'm not supposed to say his name and the name of the lab out loud. Otherwise, I would say it.
Okay.
You can find out online if you look. But there's
okay, and actually, the website for that is theycantalk.org.
Yeah, so the website is theycantalk.org. So this is a place where we've consolidated all of the tips and tricks that we have all the people have given us mm-hmm. over the last 18 months. And yeah, we tried to bring it into one place so that it's a resource for people. Mm-hmm. We have a forum too called how.theycantalk.org, where again, you don't need to have fluent pet stuff in order to jump on and start asking questions. And it's just meant to be a place for anyone who's interested in improving their ability to use buttons.
So obviously, I mean, you have a company, you're growing it, you want to have people ideally use it, but in order for the whole industry to grow, you are supporting it academically so that there's more science behind it. Let's talk a little bit about some of the detractors, some of the people who have poo-pooed this.
Sure.
What are some of the things that they say?
Well, so we are all, we all bring, certainly among the researchers and my background's in, as you know, cognitive science. So we all bring some amount of skepticism mm-hmm. about what's going on. If a dog says love you, what does that actually mean, right? That's probably, they're not thinking of like some poetry from the 19th century, that's inspiring them to recite whatever. So what the words actually mean, what the dogs actually mean when they're pressing the buttons, that's a very hard thing to figure out. I mean, it's also kind of hard thing to figure out when people say words, like what those words actually mean. So
right. And what is when I see red and say red, are you and I seeing the same thing?
Yes.
Do we mean the same thing?
The famous inverted spectrum problem.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. So we're skeptical ourselves, but we have just certainly I have seen enough examples and I kind of trust the good judgment of the people that we're working with, like the guides, the people that have done a lot of these things with their dogs. These people they're not the kind of people who are prone to just believing anything that they've been told. The people that we're working with, they are skeptical themselves. They express their own alternative hypotheses for what it is that their learners are doing. And so, but nonetheless, they're still fascinated. And there are so many of these really powerful anecdotes that as someone who has a background in cognitive science, it would be misconduct for me to not try and learn as much as we can about what all these dogs are doing with buttons, given that we have all this data.
What are some of your worst critic? What are some of the detractors saying?
So I think a lot of the criticisms would be something like, the dogs, they're just randomly pressing buttons. They're just pressing a button because it gets the attention of their person. They're just pressing a button because it gets them a treat. Now, most of the people who've taught their dogs to use buttons didn't use reinforcement clicker training at all, right? Mm-hmm. So that's obviously a red herring. But they're randomly pressing buttons. The dogs are being rewarded by the enthusiasm of their human's response. And that's why all these dogs are, you're getting these crazy videos. And of course, all these videos are just cherry picked. So the dogs do 1,000 things during the day, and you're picking the one that you can ascribe some meaning to. It's like you're seeing clouds in the sky, right? Mm-hmm. So that overinterpretation would be like probably the number one criticism.
Okay. And the way that you all address the overinterpretation is how?
Well, the reality is most of the dogs, certainly a lot of the dogs that are doing the most interesting things with these buttons, we're looking at 10 to 20 interactions per day. Mm-hmm. And a number of them are just, we've seen a dog say, like, who really likes ice cubes, who knew the word for bone and who knew the word for water, like say water bone, and then expect an ice cube. I mean, I don't know, like maybe it was just a random combination that the dog pressed, and then the person was like, it was the person's interpretation of water bone that then like made it ice cube. But
well, is something like that repeated, or is it a one-time?
Yeah, no, it ends up getting repeated.
So water bone, water bone enough times when there's a whole bunch of buttons. Occam's razor would start to suggest maybe there is a pattern to the selection of those
We've seen dogs repeat themselves. So a dog will do like some pair of presses, like play outside. And then the person who's in the other room says, "Oh, what did you say?" And then they walk towards the button with the board with the dog, and the dog repeats themselves, "Play outside." I mean, they could have, if it was just attention from random button pressing, why would they have pressed the exact same pair of buttons in the same order again? There is probably one of the coolest examples was Alexis. So Bunny will sometimes do things consistently that are very puzzling. And so we're engaged in almost like a cryptographic kind of, we're trying to decrypt what it is that Bunny's trying to communicate to Alexis. At least that's what it feels like. I mean, who knows again. And so one of the coolest stories. Bunny was pressing, and this would be at the beginning of an interaction, sound walk or sound tug, and was doing this a bunch of different times. And whenever Alexis would offer to take Bunny on a walk, Bunny was like, no, I don't want to walk. That's not what I'm interested in. Or she'd offer the tug to Bunny, and Bunny would be like, I don't want to tug. Bunny would act frustrated and like huff and then go away. Right. And then eventually, Alexa was talking to me and the professor that we're working with, and she talked about this kind of weird thing that Bunny was doing. And we're like, well, maybe Bunny is asking to use the board. It's like Bunny's asking to talk. So Alexis introduced a talk button. Bunny stops saying sound walk, sound tug after Bunny understands what the talk button means, which didn't take very long, and starts beginning conversations with talk, like come talk. And then Bunny would subsequently say more. So again, we don't know yet how we're going to develop the kind of scientific precision and confidence around the phenomena here that we're observing, but we're trying our darndest.
Where do you see this going, Leo?
So we've just released a new product called Fluent Pet Connect, which is a response to all the things that our community was telling us that they wanted out of their soundboards. We have people like a year ago or more that they had instrumented their soundboard so that every button that their dog pressed triggered an event, and then it went into it was like a dog computer, and so they could log and see exactly all the button presses that their dog made. And so I think probably a lot of our more advanced users at least would love to be able to hear every button that they're see every button, track every button that their dog had made, and maybe get a text message from their dog. And certainly they wanted better audio quality, so we released a thing that kind of met all those requests. And the cool thing about it is, if we've got tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands of these connected tiles out there, the amount that we'll all be able to figure out about what it is dogs are trying to communicate will just be exponentially greater.
So when you say connected, are they they're connected to the internet?
Connected to the internet, yeah.
And then in terms of audio quality, can you run it through a Sonos or an Echo or something like that?
You could. With our design, one of our design philosophies is to change as little as possible about this like
Right.
golden goose that seems to be,
Yeah.
teaching that the dog seems to be working. We don't want to kill it. Right.
Right.
So we think that it might be important that the sound come from a place that's close to the thing that gets actuated, like close to the button.
Okay.
And so having a sound come from, certainly it'd be weird if it came from the top floor, right? The dog presses a
Right.
thing and then like on the top floor, some like word happens. That the dog would probably be confused. So there is keeping the sound close to the buttons is a goal of ours.
Okay. So just better speakers.
Yeah. So just a better speaker in the thing. And rather than having a microphone and a speaker in every button, we have one kind of bass hex tile, which has like a good speaker in it that's very loud and very clear.
Mm-hmm.
And you can connect a bunch of other hex tiles to it that then activate that bass hex tile.
I'm just smitten with the idea of getting a text, an SMS from my dog.
Right? Yes, totally.
Is that really on the horizon?
Oh yeah. That's like one of the first and most easy things for us to do here.
So when is that deploy?
We launched it a couple weeks ago on the 3rd. We will be shipping probably in spring, summer 2022. We've got a bunch more kinks to work out and finalizing of the hardware and software to do. But yeah, we're pretty excited.
I have often joked that my dog is when my wife and I are out, my dog is sending me messages. She wants me to come home, but now I would be able to really get a message from my dog. I think
I'm actually also pretty excited about there's so much that, again, we're trying to kind of make scientifically precise a lot of the things that we're seeing, but it's a big challenge to do so. Nonetheless, we think there's like a lot of potential when, maybe you get a text message from your dog and maybe you've got the ability to like look in your Nest Cam to see what they're doing. That would be, I think, pretty cool.
I think that would be very cool and opens up all sorts of privacy issues, but I think that would be really.
We don't make Nest Cams, but yeah.
That's right. If what you do with your Nest Cam or your Smart Ring camera or whatever is your thing, between you and your dog.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's in the very near future. What do you think if you look 5 or 10 years out, Leo? Mm-hmm. Will you have sold this company, retired, and be living on a beach somewhere?
I think I'd probably go stir crazy on a beach, but okay.
That doesn't mean no. That doesn't mean no. Okay.
So one of the things I did in grad school distracted me from actual research and probably made it harder for me to graduate. I ended up not graduating. I ended up starting the company instead of graduating. So one of the things I did was run this website called Scholarpedia, which is it's not taken off, but I was helping as like the managing editor of it. And I was very excited about kind of bringing more of the kind of modern approaches to information sharing and knowledge development and to bear so that people could have kind of knowledge that they could trust online. So Scholarpedia was like a Wikipedia, but that was written by academics and had academic incentives involved in its organization. Why am I bringing this up? Because we're as much as we're working on the hardware and trying to make it sophisticated, we really want to make it a lot easier for people to discover and share and analyze the really interesting things that their dogs are doing with these devices, with sound buttons. And so in 5 or 6 years' time, I would love to see there be like a lot more systematic analysis and understanding and description of what it is that dogs are actually doing with these sound buttons. I'd love to see a kind of a robust crowdsourced effort to figure out what it is that our dogs can do and what's going on inside their minds.
What is your hunch, your inkling about how this language, being able to give dogs the ability to talk to us, mean for the relationship between dog and person? So,
I mean, any relationship counselor will tell you that communication is key, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of bad behavior happens when communication is not working, right? When people are not getting across what they want, when people can't feel like they're understood. So, we think that like we could see this really transforming the lives of a lot of dogs who are otherwise very frustrated because this God King of mine, like that controls everything about my life, doesn't understand what I need or want. So that could be transformative for sure.
I mean, that could have an impact on shelter euthanasias and
Shelter euthanasia. It could. I mean, stress among dogs, could kind of go down a lot. We've got, dogs will run away sometimes when they're, super anxious, or they'll try and escape. It could impact. We've been told that there's like a loneliness epidemic. If you could have this deeper, richer relationship with the dog in your home, like maybe that could help alleviate that. So the possibilities are really endless.
Do you see this? Do you have senior citizens or very senior citizens using this technology currently?
We have people from all age ranges using it. I mean, there are a lot of people who retire and then I think devote their lives to their dogs, which is extremely noble and I think very rewarding. Yeah. And we do have a number of those people who I think are like very much into Fluent Pet and using sound buttons.
And what about multi-dog families? Mm-hmm. How does that work out?
It tends to be the case that there is a dog who is like more interested in the sound buttons than the other. Mm-hmm. But we've seen evidence, again, this is all very preliminary, but we've seen people reporting that after their, the primary dog was using the sound buttons a lot, 3 or 6 months later, the dog that they had no hope for started experimenting and trying things out.
Have you ever seen dogs communicating with each other using the sound buttons?
That is something that we're very interested in, as you might imagine, because that would be fascinating. We have not seen. People have said that they're communicating, but it's quite rare. And we would want to watch a video of it to see what was actually going on. Yeah. What we have seen, which is kind of interesting, is a lot of reports of dogs speaking for the primary dog speaking for the secondary dog. So if the secondary,
translating from my dumb sister.
Exactly. So there are reports where the dog will say, potty outside, and the dog will kind of look at the other dog, and then they'll both go outside. The one who said potty outside won't do anything, and the other one will.
Now, I imagine on the hex that has the subjects or name thing, you could put not just the people in the family, but the other dogs.
Yes.
Do you see that happening?
Think we have seen dogs referring to other dogs and to other cats in the home. There's a heartbreaking video you can see on the subreddit, the cats subreddit, by one of our users, where there's this one cat, who's like, I'm sorry, I know this is sacrilege, but the cat is mourning apparently the loss of one of her cat friends, and was constantly pressing the name of the cat friend and saying where, and then crying. Be ready right before you watch this video.
We will put a link to that in the show notes for sure. Wow. So to just wrap up, leave us with your favorite story of all the stories, all the videos you've gotten over the years. Which is the one that had the biggest impact on you?
Oh gosh.
Easy one.
Yeah, I know. I mean, certainly one of the most striking ones, and I don't know if we don't really know what's going on, but this was another example of Bunny was repeatedly pressing some combination of buttons that were very difficult to discern. It was like, in this case, Bunny was saying night talk sleep, or night sleep talk, or night talk, or, and we're like, what are you talking about? Like, what is going on, Bunny? This is, of course, after the introduction of the talk button. Right. And I think I was speaking with her, and we were like, is Bunny talking about dreams and dreaming? And we're like, no, that cannot be. But we're like, yeah, let's introduce a dream button. One of our researchers actually proposed, when Bunny's dreaming, like, wake her up. You can see when a dog's dreaming, they're growling, right, and they're doing
running in their dreams.
Exactly.
With their paw.
Yeah. So wake up Bunny and ask Bunny what's going on. And so Alexis did that, and then waited 30 seconds, and eventually Bunny said stranger animal.
Wow.
I mean,
so we can start to do dream analysis with these buttons.
Yeah, the structure and interpretation of dog dreams. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll save that for a future year. Leo Trottier, thank you so much for being with us today. This is fascinating. We will continue to follow this whole journey that you're on, and as the world gets to be able to literally talk to, and hear from their dogs. It's awesome. Thank you for being with us.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Leo and his team at Fluent Pet have been very busy since our chat. The popularity of those buttons has been growing rapidly here in the United States and around the world. In fact, there are close to 100,000 households globally that are using these buttons to communicate with their pets. Also, the company was recently featured in the Netflix series The Hidden Life of Pets, where they chronicle the story of Alexis Devine and her dog Bunny. The company has also released a new initiative, which is a program designed exclusively for helping kids teach their dogs and cats to talk, using these buttons. They are currently working on their newest line, which is Fluent Pet Connect, and that will launch later in 2022. If you'd like more information about these buttons, you can visit them on their website. We have a link in the show notes for today's episode. Well, that is all we have time for on today's show. I want to thank you for joining us. If you haven't done so already, please follow us in your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. All the links are on our website at longleashshow.com. That is also where you can listen to all of the back episodes of The Long Leash. Please tell a friend about the show at the dog park or at the veterinarian or just anyone you know who is a dog lover. Let them know about The Long Leash and about Dog Podcast Network. I'm James Jacobson. On behalf of all of us here at Dog Podcast Network, I'd like to wish you and your dog a very warm aloha.